All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome. We are back with Smirky Inside. I'm Curt Covert. I'm the owner of Smirk and Dagger Games. And we got a special treat this week because I have alongside me Andy Kim, who is the designer of The Spill Disaster at Deepwell 4, which is going to be coming out. We'll probably launch our Kickstarter in mid-July. So it's really exciting. But I wanted to have Andy on today because the last two shows I've kind of given you like a little sneak peek of some of the things. But I wanted to actually have Andy talk to us about his original inspiration and all of that. So first of all, Andy, how's it going? Good to see you.
Good. How are you? How are you?
Doing all right. Now, obviously, we've been talking a bunch in the last couple of weeks as we've been really trying to put the finishing polish on some of these mechanics. But before we get into any of those things, I really did kind of want to dive back, way back. When did you start developing this game?
Well, it's funny. So I had basically had a couple designs already developed, and I was going to it was my first experience going to design meetups and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I was at this one time. I was at this design meetup. It was actually for I don't even remember what the event is. I was driving home, and I love dice towers. I just love I have a bunch on my shelf, and the thought popped into my head that basically, what if I could make a dice tower that can roll in 4 different directions? And so that's where it sort of spawned. And so when I got home, and Emily, my wife, can attest to this, I got home and I started cutting up cardboard, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And so I was just, basically I came up with this. This is the original 4-way dice tower that I created, and I kept it because it was just very nostalgic. And so you can see here, it's just just cut up pieces of paper, and I put that together, and I rolled some dice in it, and I was just ecstatic. I was like, "It works! Eureka! It works!" And so then I was like this could be the start. I could probably make it'd be really interesting to use this in a game somehow. And so that's when I started brainstorming ideas on theme and how, I was thinking, what is a thing that basically where something kind of comes out outwardly, and then we have to fight it back. So at first I was thinking your typical Dungeons and Dragons type of thing. Maybe it's just monsters coming out and we're all adventurers, and we have to fight back the monsters or something like that. And I was like, that's been done to death. So many games like that. And then it was my wife that came up with this idea that, what about what spreads like that, and oil, and an oil spill. And that's when I was the bells, the light bulb went on, and that's where it all began. It was just okay, well, there's oil coming out, and then it dawned on that, there's ocean life in the oceans that need to be saved. And so that led to one another, and then basically that developed into, and you've showed it a little bit, but this is the deconstructed version of the original dice tower. That this is the original one that I took to Pro TO and stuff. So so that's what resulted. And so that was the inspiration. That basically it started from this, and then basically my wife came up with the idea of this oil spill, and then the game mechanics kind of grew out of that. So sometimes I think of a theme and develop mechanics around it, but this is the first time I had a mechanic. I had a dice tower first, and then a theme sort of grew out of that, and it just worked beautifully.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think I've done it both ways as well. Sometimes a really great mechanic inspires me, and then naturally leads to a theme, and then sometimes it's all about the theme and what are the mechanics that support it. So I get that. Well, first, I just want to say hello to Holly, Colin, Redbeard. We got a couple people watching already out there. And I invite you to go ahead and ask questions because we are able to see them, and we'll get them answered from Andy. Now, obviously, the tower is the kind of I guess the real it's the centerpiece of the whole game. And so certainly you were just showing like the deconstructed. This was now the fully constructed one that you had done that I saw at the show Proto. And then you also, while we were like developing, you also had like shown, well, this is maybe like a different approach, like some kind of a funnel system that you made in a 3D printer, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I actually took to heart and I really started thinking about. And I like this idea, but I also wanted to make sure like some of the dice couldn't be like kind of thrown in at an angle that it somehow still spilled them like a dice tower. And that's how we ended up with like the double funnel system that we currently are playing with.
I was just like, that is perfect.
But anyway, so how long has this been in development? Like when did you actually start work?
I started work on this. It goes way back about almost 2017.
Wow.
Maybe
okay.
Further, I'm not really. I'm not 100% sure. I should maybe keep a journal about this stuff. But 2017-ish around there. And then I think you picked it up in 2018 at Proto in September of 2018. So yeah, it's been there's been a lot of iterations that went around. So by the time you got it, it's gone through quite a bit of changes.
As they always do.
A lot of balancing, like even just determining how many dice should be in the game itself was a bit of I think originally I had 100 dice in there.
Oh.
And it was brutal.
Now, there are still hell tons of dice. There's still 60 oil dice and another 4 weather dice in there. So it's still a huge dice fest. But but what's kind of cool is that the dice aren't just like dice that you roll. They represent the oil spilling onto the board, and so it becomes a really thematic element, not just a bunch of dice that you roll. So anyway, now Emily, your wife, she, I guess, had the initial inspiration for theme, and she's actually had some other ideas as well. But what were some of the initial design challenges that you faced as you were working on the game?
Well, there was in terms of like how there's a lot of thematic things, like wire, especially with the item cards. I had to do a lot of research on how actual oil is cleaned up by actually men and women out there who do a great job of cleaning our oceans and stuff. And mind you, the game doesn't replicate exactly because it has to be a game still. It can't be just exactly. But to fit it thematically, the animals early on, I had the idea of flipping the animals over so that there's an oil side to the animals so that they're dirty and they have to be cleaned up. But also in terms of number of dice that get dropped in. Oh, there was the action selection. I borrowed from a lot of other cooperative games like Pandemic. There's action action allocation and stuff like that. And then I remember there was a thing that I read some of Jeff Engelstein's books on game design and stuff. And there was one thing I always took to heart about the difference between input randomness and output randomness. And I wanted to make sure that input randomness was the thing for me. I didn't want people to input randomness doesn't feel as random as output randomness. And so just for people who don't know what that means is basically something random happens and you get a chance to react to it. Whereas output randomness is you do something and then it's luck of the draw to see if you succeed. And I really don't like that about I don't really like that in my games. So I made that was one of the things to make sure it's a dice tower, right? We're rolling dice, so there's going to be some randomness, but how we deal with that randomness is what the game is really all about.
Yeah, that's really cool. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand our window a little bit because just recently I have set up in Tabletop Simulator a playable version of this game, which I thought was going to be mighty challenging based on the dimensional tower. But my son had already worked on a 3D model so we could prototype and get it 3D printed. And I figured, well, maybe that model can actually go into TTS. Now, I tried it and I couldn't get it to work. So a big shout out to Alexi Minardo, who showed me how to do that, and is going to be doing some great scripting for this once we get it a little bit further down the road. Yeah, as you were saying, the randomization of the dice, I think when people first see the game, they might say to themselves, oh, yeah, I mean, the dice are such a random element. There's so many of them. Like, is this kind of a random game? And well, I'm just going to drop these dice. Look at this.
Oh, I love this.
I just love it. Oh, that's so great. And so anyway, so they spill into one of four quadrants, right? And then it just really represents where the oil is randomly spilling into. And it starts in this outer ring, and then it works its way out. So there's a 2 there. And here, look, a 5 goes over here. If that had been a 4, it would have endangered a wildlife, a pelican. But you can see as more and more come out, they start stacking up. And each sector can only hold 3 dice before it starts actually poisoning the wildlife. And there it is. There's that kind of that dirty oil getting all over the animal that you now have to rescue that animal, or they will go to sick bay and you'll lose them. Yeah, so when I first saw this game, Andy, when I met you over at Proto-TO, you had, of course, your original version of this dice tower sitting on the table, and it was just stunning when I walked up. When you first developed this prototype, and by the way, like, kudos. I mean, how is it that this is, like, I think one of your first prototypes you ever made, and you created like a fully printed prototype with this much detail? You must have been so psyched when you saw that for the first time set up on your table, and like, oh my God, people are going to lose their minds when they see this on the table, right?
Yeah, no, I knew it was like, it was going to be big. It was going to be a big, huge thing. And so I was going for, like, people are going to stop and look at this thing, I hope. So.
Yeah. So were there any other design challenges? You mentioned, like, wanting the random input, not the random output, where, you don't want the randomness to be a result of your actions, but something that you have to react to. So in this case, the dice drop down the tower, it creates a situation, and now the specialist must react or potentially lose the game. So what other kind of design iterations, big things that were challenges that you found to solve for?
The biggest one, and I know, we've both been working on this quite a bit, is the whole balance of the whole thing. Like, I remember the very first time, with 100 dice, it was impossible to win. There was no winning condition that would work. So then I reduced it, and then it became too easy. And then I involved player powers and items and stuff to basically sort of balance it out and stuff. But it also, those were added as a sort of, it's fun. Like, it's fun to have your own power. And so one of the things was introducing the specialists, like the risk engineer or the marine biologist and stuff, that they do different things to increase the ability to save animals or move around the board. Like, the sea captain is a good example, like, being able to move around the board, because and every single element is very key to victory. And there's no, like, I think we're both finding there's no one avenue of strategy that is dominant over the other that I can, like, that we've been finding. But like, one of the things is you got to start cleaning that oil. That's one of the things. That's one of the main things you're here for. But saving those animals, everything, like, to make sure you have all of these ducks in a row is very important. So that balance was key. That's the thing that keeps reiterating over and over again. Like, how can we balance this better?
Yeah. So Colin's got a question for you. He wanted to know whether it was easier or harder to match the thematics to the mechanics apart from the tower. So how well did the thematics mesh as you were starting to build the game to the thematic elements?
This one, like out of all the games I've designed, I haven't designed that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not Reiner Knudsen. Like out of all the games I have designed, this one was actually the easiest one. It was just a good melding. Like everything just fit perfectly. So I was lucky on this one. It was just a beautiful marriage of thematics and mechanics.
Yeah, well, and I agree. I think this is one of those games where the thematic and the mechanics just mesh. It would be hard to separate out the thematic and still have the same game. So yeah, once you establish that the oil was coming out at random and it's threatening the sea life, there's a lot of great tension that comes up, and I think that's one of the interesting things about this game, or the thing that got me excited, is that you quickly get invested and immersed in this theme. As the oil continues to threaten the sea creatures, and when they get hit, and even if you can't rescue one of them and they end up going to sick bay, it's rough on players, and especially it's not easy to win this game. So if you lose, you're like, oh no, I've let down the oceans.
It's funny you say that, because whenever I've gone to like these plays testing or these game design sessions, I love watching people play this game because I get tense watching them. I feel for the players because they're thinking is like, okay, we got to do this, and I don't want to get involved in the play test. I want them to play it for themselves. And in my mind, I'm just like thinking, oh, I don't know if I would do that, right? And then they would do certain things, but then sometimes it works out, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that was a great idea. Come to think of it, and it just has this dynamic that's sort of grown. So it's exciting to watch people watch the game being played as much as it is to play it.
Yeah. So Christy asked us a question about who the ideal audience for the game is, and especially as it relates to children. Like, what age do you think would be appropriate? Now, one of the things, I'll let you answer, but one of the things that I have noticed is that because people get emotionally invested, that's partly a parent's call on how well your child can deal with that concept of potentially losing animals. But yeah, I mean, generally, who would you say the game is for, and what ages is right for it?
It's fair. Like I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I know although they coming from me, like me being their father, they're a little more gamery than other kids, I guess. But like I've seen, like when I was at play testing sessions, I've seen a father and his 6-year-old get involved. And play, and he was right in there. And because it is a cooperative game, it is a great family game. Again, there is the emotional attachment to the animals, but again, that's why I want to call it a sick bay and not the morgue or something.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Just like they're not dead, they're just really sick and they can't get back. So, you can sort of downplay the intensity of what is actually going on. But I know, like for my kids love animals. They're huge animal lovers. And so, this game is really up their alley in terms of thematics, like, saving the animals and stuff. They're really into that sort of environmental thing. So it's a good teaching tool as well. Like it's a great conversation piece to talk about, not only about oil and what what we're doing to our environment, but overall in terms of like what the environmental effects are of what we humans do to our environment. It's a good learning tool as well, and as well as being a fun game too. So
well, and that's the thing. I wouldn't want people to like get the idea that this is like a heavy or a downer kind of a game. I mean, it's tense. And when you win, you feel like you really accomplished something. And I think a little bit different than Pandemic, somehow like, losing in Pandemic and like the world of humans gets wiped out is harder it's sometimes animals, you have more pathos for the animals in some cases. My 27-year-old like wanted to flip the table when he lost the first time. But one of the other things that I know that we've done is that we also have an intro game where the challenge is lessened a little bit, that the dice don't ramp up as quickly. And that is one thing that we've done both to kind of ease you into the game, but also we thought for younger players who might have more of a problem emotionally. So that's one thought.
Yeah. And the game is fairly easy. It's not a cakewalk, but it's a lot doable.
Yes. Yeah. Let's see. So other things we've got on here. Oh, that's interesting. Kirk Rich was saying that he could see spaceships and random debris as like a different theme applied to this. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of spilling out into space. But one of the ways I've described this game previously is like a reverse castle defense.
I've heard that. Yep, a lot of
people. So like, you are trying to hold back the oil, remove the oil, save the sea life, but it's about containment rather than like charging the castle. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
So Fritz, hey Fritz, he's interested to know, are there time parameters within the game, like a turn down clock or a real time clock to keep the pressure or tension going?
It's basically the countdown clock it's technically the number of dice left in the bag. So that's sort of your countdown clock. I've played around with other countdown clocks. At one point I even had a idea of like having this board even turn, but it was just like it was just one mechanic too much. Like it just got way too complicated for. It's supposed to be a fairly simple family game. So yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say that's true. The bag of dice itself is a countdown clock. Once the bag is empty, the game does end. And if you can't clean up any disasters that are left on the board by the end of that, that's it. It's game over. But one of the interesting things, and now we can kind of like start talking about where we've had more collaboration as well.
Yeah.
We now have winning conditions. When you first pitched me this game, it was about just like keeping your head above water, quote unquote. And now we have developed a way to actually win, which is kind of emotionally rewarding when this happens. So, for example, this is one of the win conditions. There are 3 different cards right now to start. So if you save 3 contaminated marine animals, remove a total of 12 oil dice from the water, and save 2 full sets of marine life, of which there are 6 types. If you do that without losing, you've won. How do you think this has really impacted the game from your point of view?
Well, that was one of the things I struggled with in this game, because the end game was always a issue for me, because it seemed like near the end of the game, especially if you're losing the game, it's weird. It felt like an unsatisfactory loss.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain that. Like when you win, it's like it's very clear you win. But if you lose, it's just, is there anything? And it was just very nebulous. So I really did want to have some sort of win condition, and that was one of the things we struggled with for years. And I don't know, Curt, was this your idea? I can't even remember who came up with this, but
I think I threw out an option. You said cool, but could it be like? I think I threw out could there be a win condition? You said, hey, what if there were like multiple like things, and you could kind of piecemeal like three decks and like match up one from each, and so to be different every time. And then I was concerned a little bit about balance, and that's when we ended up coming up with cards that were essentially all balanced to one another.
Yeah.
So And honestly, they're the exact same things that you need to do in order to win, even if you didn't have these. If you're not taking oil out of the water, if you're not saving contaminated animals or pulling animals to safety, you're going to lose anyway. And this just like prioritizes maybe one thing over another just a little bit more.
And I think it makes it easier for families too, because it gives them sort of a goal, like it gives them some goals. Because I think it could be overwhelming maybe at like mid game where people are like, I don't know what to do. I don't know. Should I save animals? Should I, at least there's some goals in place that basically, you know what? Let's focus on this goal. I think we can do this, and people can really plan out. So to aim to win, and I think it made the game that much more fun to me, at least, like to have that win condition, because I'm constantly looking at that thing. I'm like, okay, we're so close. We're so close. I could do this, but if we do this, that's that win condition. And then sometimes you go for that, and it's like, oh no, that was a mistake. We shouldn't have done that. So
yeah. Well, and honestly, to that point, I feel like in this game there is an initial tendency for players to be so focused on like saving the animals that they lose sight a little bit of the importance of getting the oil out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you spend most of your time just dealing with the animals, you're probably going to lose because the oil will eventually overwhelm you. So a balanced approach is usually best, even if you've got like things you're trying to achieve. So I think that's kind of neat. So Michelle asks, since it does have some educational uses, are we going to do some homeschooling information or lesson plans? And we did something like that with Before There Were Stars. And yes, I think we would absolutely create some lesson plans for this game for various grade levels. I think that would be a great thing.
That would be great.
Yeah. And Joelle is saying, you could actually use this for other environmental issues for saving the environment, drilling, forestry, So
that was one of the ideas I had. I think forest fires was another one, but it was thematically. There was a couple thematic issues I had with the forest fire one. Like I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but like I was just like it didn't work as well as the oil spill for me.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that we just did was we have been kind of going around and around on the actual resource cards.
Yeah.
Originally, they just had one ability per card, and it was randomly drawn from a deck when you either pulled 3 oil out of the water or saved a set of sea life, and boom, you got this random effect that you could put in Tableau and use when it was smart to use it.
Yeah.
And since then, really in the last, couple months, and then just even this past week, we had a major breakthrough, which I was so excited about. And again, credit to Emily, right?
Yeah.
So talk to me about the idea that Emily had as I call one of these up.
Well, it's funny. So basically, I think one of the things was with the item cards. Like originally they were called item cards or resource cards. It was you get these item cards, and originally it was pick 2, draw 2, and pick 1. And I found while we're playing, we never use them. Because a lot of times you would get an item, and it's like it's very situational. Couldn't use it, or sometimes it's like, oh, that one we're gonna use right away, and like it felt wrong. It didn't. It was so random, and it was sometimes not helpful and stuff. So then so she was saying, like what she brought up was basically having multiple, because some items are very strong, very OP, and other ones are just like useless, almost useless. And so we're just trying to figure out, okay, maybe there should be like an A deck and then a B deck and a C deck, and then so you shuffle them together and then you deal them out. And then that expanded into what we have here, where basically each power, because they're not all equal, maybe they need to be charged up. And I'll admit that, I drew inspiration from certain other games. Space Base was a big one, because I know Space Base has those ones where you can charge up certain powers.
Yeah.
So that's where I was inspired in terms of that type of thing. So, and this is the biggest game changer for like playing it like this is so amazing, because now you pick your items at the beginning of the game. You pick the items you're going to have, and then you have them out. So you can strategize. Oh, we're going to aim to get this item up and running so that we can either prevent certain situations, or we're going to get this other item so that we can get another character in, or something like.
Yeah.
So basically, you can really almost plan out a strategy, but it's not too hard that families are going to be overwhelmed again. Like you can literally look at them and say, "Oh, I like this one," and like you can literally do that, right? So it's just great, because I find that I'm actually using the items now, and because I picked them at the beginning, like we group team picked the items, and now of course we're going to use them because that's what we wanted.
And I think Emily's inspiration was, if we could choose like just 3 or 4 for the game rather than have them dealt out randomly, maybe there's something around that. And then you and I sat and really talked about, all right, well, what's the process? And so now we've got it where at the beginning of the game, once you know all the different character roles that you're going to be using, once you've seen the win condition, now everyone gets 2 of these cards. You choose one of them to put in the tableau. And so you end up with a tableau of 4 tools that you think are going to help you achieve the goal with the crew that you have. And then that's great for the initial strategy, but as you play, and you pull 3 oil out of the water or save a set of sea life, you get an activation cube. And now the discussion amongst the group is, what do we want to power up? What's most important right now? Is it preventing a horrible weather die from really destroying our next 4 turns? Or do we want to like bank on something that's really going to help us like later in the game, and like, push the oil tracker back so we dump fewer dice every turn? It's a great dynamic tension, and it's been really a pleasure working on that with you.
Oh, no, I love this addition to the game. It's I think by far has been the biggest game changer.
So we got a couple other comments. Let's see. Have you found that assigning a task for each player has helped, or does each player need to have a balanced approach? That's a good question. That's from Rob.
I don't know. Through our plays, I find what I really wanted was the cooperative nature to really come out. And even when like Curt and I are play testing it, like I find myself talking to Curt and saying, I don't know, should I do this or this? Like I'm finding like even amongst people that I know are sort of alpha gamers, like they are not alpha gaming as much. I don't know what the nature because I myself, I'm not that much of an alpha gamer. Actually, you'd have to talk to my wife, but maybe I am. So I find that the discussion, the cooperative nature really comes out, because there is a lot of times no right answer. Sometimes it's just you have to go with your gut, and it's part of the fun of this game, because there's no, like, you can plan ahead. You can plan for this item, but sometimes you just have to just throw that plan away and switch on a dime, because things have just gone awry.
Well, and sometimes, it's like we said at the outset, you drop the dice and then you have to react. And depending on the random place where those dice went, you might all of a sudden have to pivot hard. So for example, like, we've got here the hazmat specialist, they have a discount on removing oil dice from the board, which is great. So you want to use them to do that, to really get the most efficiency out of that roll. But if there is an animal in trouble and you are nearby on your turn, you may just have to like do what it takes, for the situation. So I think you do end up having a balanced approach, but everyone has their specialty of something they can do that no one else can do quite as well. So given no emergency situation, there is like a tendency for one person to focus a little bit more.
And even in an emergency situation, that you've seen me play it sometimes where it's like, oh, I really want to use this ability, but there's that animal in trouble. Maybe I'll just let it go. Like, you know,
Right. Yeah.
and
You
like,
can't save them all.
yeah. And sometimes it's just like, I really want to use this ability. So sometimes even in emergency situations, as long as it's not a losing condition, sometimes the right move is to use your specialty action to do it. But sometimes that's the wrong action. So it's, yeah, there's a lot of tension in each decision, which is what I really enjoy.
Yeah. Let's see. So Kirk, yes, our win condition goals are in fact table wide. So you win or lose together based on those goals as a group.
Yeah.
There are no individual goals. There's no individual winner. So. Darren says that we should definitely have a follow-up session with Emily, so she can talk about her whole role. Let's see. If individual goals can be swapped to advance an overall cooperative win effect. No, I don't. There's no individual goals, but you have maybe what you saw is that there are opportunities. There are always 6 specialists who might be available and only 4 active at any given time. So if the specialist that you really need is outside of the game, there are resource cards that if you plan to have one, you can say, oh, yeah, it's important for me to focus on oil or animals or whatever, and I'm going to swap my specialist for someone outside of the game. Or I can potentially add the ability of any role in addition to my own right now for this turn. So yeah, so there's some sharing of that sort.
Yeah.
Cool. Other things.
The weather dice was that was not in my original design. That was something you added, and it was beautiful. I thought they were great.
Yeah, and that came from Avenel Wing, who who we work with on marketing and demos, but I also love to play test with them, and she had this inspiration. That she, I think, emailed me about in more detail after one of our play sessions. And it's like, what if? And so now, yes, there are 4 weather dice. And if they drop through the tower, they have, of course, 1 of 6 effects. And only 1 of them is good. Everything else is terrible. So,
which is what weather does. Like that's very thematic in that sense. So
yeah. But yeah, in any case, and of course, that gives you one more thing to struggle against. So you might be moving a lot slower through the water. Everyone's restricted to 1 movement across the board per action, or animals might be harder to rescue that turn, or you can't. One of the worst is if no one can use their player ability, and that's for a full round. So everyone has to lose that ability once. David wants to know what's used to charge up the abilities. The abilities themselves, unless they say, don't really have costs. But here, for example, we've got the Marine Vet. Now, once per turn, they can save a marine animal at no cost in the same sector as them. Or they can save a contaminated one for 1 AP, which is a discount because normally that's 2. Now, it doesn't take anything for them to use that special ability. It's just naturally part of their character.
Yeah. If you think about a lot of cooperative games or other games, like, Pandemic has their different abilities. Well, Marco Polo's notorious for, the really crazy player abilities. But yeah, I don't think this is anything new in the game, but it's basically, each character is more powerful in a certain way, and it makes them very unique, right? And
and again, all of this art is all just temporary. We're waiting for our artist to start up on the project, and once we have that artwork, and I'm going to be definitely showcasing it because it's exciting news. But I'm going to save it. I'm going to save that news.
Yeah.
But yeah, so well, Andy, thanks so much for joining me.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great to talk through all this stuff with you and let all our viewers like kind of get into what was behind the inspiration and everything else, because I think that's just a fascinating story. Oh, okay. Actually, one more question from David. He wanted to clarify the charging up the abilities, kind of like space base. Those are, by the way, the resource cards that you choose at the beginning.
Yeah.
And yes, those are charged up. You get an activation cube every time you remove a set of 3 dice or a full set of 6 marine animals.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you decide where they go and what they power. So, and of course, you can then spend it and then rebuy another one with the next achievement that you get. So.
Yeah, and they're not easy. They're not hard. They're not easy. It's just something that you need to do to achieve. Like it's not like you can just easily just get those item cards.
Yeah. But again, it's all part and parcel of doing what you need to do anyway. Yeah. So it almost times them out. You have to remove dice from the game or you're going to lose. And every time you get 3, great, you're also going to get this other little reward. Yeah. But that might change. Am I going to save this animal, or am I going to get this oil off the board that's now going to give us an activation cube as well? Yeah. And now, as a result, did I lose that animal? Yeah. These are the tough calls you have to make. And it's a game of tough calls. And it will get a lot of comparison, I think, to other cooperative games, like Pandemic. But, man, I really think this game just stands out on its own. And one of the things that I think you intended from the design, and I think really comes through, is that this is very much, I think, still in almost a casual game space in terms of complexity. Mm-hmm. It is not something where you're going to get really worn down by rules and minutia. Mm-hmm. It's something where the concepts are pretty broad. The decisions are still interesting, mm-hmm. but almost anyone could step in and play this game, I feel. And that's one of the things that attracted me to this game as well.
Yep. No, I wanted it to be simple, like not simple as in like super easy or whatever, but like it's a simple rule set, so it only takes a few minutes to explain the rules, and then you're in and going. And even if you play with small children, like it's a cooperative game, as long as you're playing with them, right. And lead. I find when I'm playing with my kids, especially in a cooperative game, I give them the options, tell them these are your options. What do you want to do? And let them make the decisions, right?
Sure.
Good or bad. And so this game really allows you to do that as well.
Great. All right. Well, again, thanks so much, Andy, for coming on and talking with us. And thank you, everyone, for your questions and for watching. You can always subscribe to our YouTube channel and our Facebook page or our Twitch account. So go ahead and do so. You'll be notified next time we broadcast, which, again, is Tuesdays at 4. And I'll have something else from our design table next week. So hope to see you then.
All right. Okay.
Bye-bye, everyone.